Welcome to another episode of Bright Headed Publishing Audiobook Book Club. I am your host, Kelly Morgan. Today I'm excited to have author Andrew Mann join the podcast and become the newest member of the book club. Andrew is an author and part owner of a solar energy business. He is a recovering addict who also suffered from anxiety attacks since the age of 12 and depression his entire life. After years and multiple failed attempts, he was finally able to beat his addiction and has now devoted his life to helping people who suffer from addictions and issues related to childhood abuse. He has a fiancee, 2 stepchildren, 2 dogs, 3 cats, and they live in Bergen County, New Jersey. When Andrew isn't being an author, he enjoys boxing, writing, doing podcasts and radio shows, and getting the message of the book. If an addict like me can get clean, anyone can. You can check out Andrew on his website, suchunfortunates.com. He is here today to talk about his book, Such Unfortunates. Please welcome the newest member of the book club, Andrew Mann. Andrew, thank you so much for being a part of the book club and being on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Definitely.
You are very welcome. So I'm really excited to talk about your book. I had a chance to look it over, and it's a memoir, so it's things that really happened, real life things, and I think it's always inspiring when somebody is willing to share their truth.
Yes.
So I'm excited to talk about it. But before we get into all that, I always like to ask authors about their journey to becoming an author. So, before you wrote this book or whatever made you decide to write the book, did you always know that you wanted to be an author?
No, not at all. I did like writing stories, but I just thought I would, I'd sit down and I'd write a few pages and then I'd say, you know what, maybe I'll write a book. And then I'd write a few more pages and then I'd say, this is too much. And I would let it go. And I just thought it was sort of out of my reach, I guess. I never thought I would have the time to sit down and actually do it. I knew I wanted to share my story. And the more I had gone through what I went through in my life, I knew I needed to get it out there to help people, but I just didn't think it was possible. I really didn't. I didn't think I would be able to focus enough and actually get enough down to make it a book. But then people started telling me that I couldn't do it. And that sort of motivated me to do it. And people said, everybody says they'll do it and nobody does it. I said, oh, really? I'm going to do it this time. And I put myself, and like you said, I had to learn a lot about the publishing and how to get it out there. And it was a big learning curve. So I learned a lot of stuff along the way.
I think as authors, or when you're writing a book, whether you consider yourself to be an author or a writer, right, when you're writing the book, you're only concerned with writing the book.
Correct.
You really don't think about anything else. And then once you've written the book, right, then you're like, now what do I do?
Right.
So what was your journey? You self-published. So what was that like? I mean, was it an experience? Was it hard? Was it easy? What was your journey? And what was one misconception you had about self-publishing or the publishing industry?
Okay. I was actually offered 2 publishing contracts and I turned them both down. And the reason was both of them, there was one that wanted me to pay, and that was a complete no-no to me. I wrote the book, and I learned from other authors, a publisher, you should never pay a publisher, they said. Said if the publisher really has faith in your book and thinks it's a profitable thing, they'll come to you instead of you paying them. And it worried me. And then I started hearing some horror stories about people who had spent $5,000 and $10,000 to get their book published, and then they only sold a couple copies. And then the other publishing contract I was offered, I didn't like how much control they took over of the contract. They only paid you twice a year. And then it was so many different pages to determine how much you actually got paid. And it was almost like they took complete control of the book. And I said, you know what, before I'm going to accept one of these, I'm going to learn about self-publishing and how people do it. And I actually started watching YouTube videos of other authors that had put suggestions on how you go about getting a book self-publishing on Amazon, and especially all the things available today. And so I said, all right, I'm going to give it a shot. And I used the site called Upwork.com to find an editor, to find someone to make the cover of the book. And I got to hire people on there, which was very simple to be able to do it. And, I had a really good experience. I met some really good people. And after they read my book, people were even more enthusiastic on helping me. And then they started telling all their friends. I think just by hiring people, I probably sold 20 or 30 copies of my book right when it came out from doing that. So it ended up being a good experience in that way. And I'm glad that I went the self-publishing route, even though I wasn't a computer expert or even getting my book uploaded to Amazon and all the different edits. It was difficult, but I'm really glad I did it. The money you make is more when you self-publish. You get basically all the profits come to you. I control what happens with the book. And it's been a really interesting journey that has been great. For 99% of it has been terrific. There's been 1% that I've had to learn some difficult things about, wanting to get reviews and how you should go about that. And really what I found is you just have to let them happen. If you try to pay people to review your book, it's not really the right way to go about it. And there's a lot of scam artists out there that'll come and they'll say, hey, pay me this and I'll get 10 people to review your book and they'll all be reviews on here and here. And then it turns out, this was one of the things I first had a bad experience with, is someone approached me and I didn't know anything about this. And they said, your first few reviews are free. But after that, we're going to charge you for it. And I said, okay, well, I'll see what the first free reviews, but it really ended up being a nightmare, situation. So I would recommend to other authors to, even though you'd like to get reviews and it's tempting to pay people to do that, I would stick to not doing that. You're going to end up with more problems. They put reviews that just sound fake, and it's much better to get your own reviews that people really want to review your book rather than paying people. That's what I came to see in the beginning. So that was a good lesson for me to learn. And then I had to learn how to market the book, because a lot of the problem when you're a self-published author and you don't have that company behind you is marketing this book and getting it out there. And I really learned a lot of great ways to do that. First of all, Facebook. What you want to do is start a page for your book and join as many other groups that promote books, other authors, readers, every group you can join out there. I'd recommend people to really go do that and talk in the groups, talk with people. Some people said, don't talk to other authors or your competition. I don't believe that. I've had most of the other authors I've talked to have been more than willing to help me and also do as many podcasts. And like we're doing right here, I've done a lot of radio and podcasts because of the subject of my book. I think people have found it interesting, and it's been like a pandemic that's affecting so many people. So a lot of people have reached out to me or been willing to have me on their shows, which has been another great thing. So the amount of sales I've had and reviews and everything, it's been way beyond my expectation. So that has been a great thing.
Yeah, I think when you self-publish your book, and I've said this before, that you really have to be an entrepreneur because you've got to hustle and market and get the book out there. And I think that most authors think that once they get it published, they're done, and you're not. That's just the beginning. It is a journey and it is a process, and you have to continue to market your book, not just the first month that comes out, or it's a continual thing.
Right.
So absolutely.
Yeah.
So tell us about your book, Such Unfortunates. I know that you had published back in 2019, and so I'm interested to hear about it, and then the reception that you've had as well.
Yeah, it's been overwhelming. It's really been a great response, from all the people that I've heard from. So many people. I've had people, the best ones, I've had a girl that wrote me that was suicidal and said, your book helped me, get out of that. And that was awesome to hear that. And overwhelmingly, the majority of people that have come to me have been extremely positive. Even if there's something wrong in the book, everyone's not going to like your book, but if it's a legitimate review and they find something wrong, I'm willing to hear it. Another thing as an author is I wouldn't recommend getting in an argument with anyone online, because they'll see your book. And I've seen even other authors do this to each other, that if they don't like somebody, they'll go put a real negative review on somebody's book. And, so that is something you want to be careful of. And so I try to stay offline as much as possible, because I've had experiences. People will see you're an author and, I don't know if it's jealousy or something, but they will try to get angry at you for something. And why do you believe this? And and it's just, so I try to stay off anything outside of promoting my book when I'm online. I really do. And I've seen other authors attacked and their books given 1 star, and it's by other authors doing it. And I don't know, it's almost like a childish thing. But for the majority, the overwhelming majority has been positive. The reception from the book has been great. I've had so many people reach out to me. It's really been all over the country. I've had people in other countries write to me about it. So it's really been a great experience.
That's fantastic. So tell us about it.
All right. I had gone through, I grew up in a very awful childhood. I grew up in sort of the nightmare family of nightmare families. It was very abusive from the time I was born to whenever. I never, I didn't hear I love you in my family ever in my life. It wasn't that type of family. It was just, but on the outside, things kind of looked normal. So no one ever realized what was going on. And so then as a kid, I started developing really bad depression, anxiety, and I was acting out in other ways that should have set off a lot of alarms, but they didn't. And by the time I was 12 years old, I was having such bad panic attacks that they put me on an adult dose of Xanax. And I was basically on that for my whole high school while I was in high school. But I also started drinking to deal with the panic attacks, because before I turned 20, I had taken myself to the hospital. I think it was like 44 times, believing I was dying of a heart attack. That's how bad my anxiety had come. And when I went to a doctor, they would say, oh, these are just anxiety attacks. Take this drug, it'll make you feel better. But nobody ever wanted to look what was causing the anxiety behind that. And there's more to it, but the abuse had me, it was just a terrible way to go through life as a child. And I ended up becoming addicted to opiates. Started out with painkillers, Percocets, and then Oxycontin, and then moved all the way on to heroin. And basically lost everything, ended up homeless on the street without a chance of surviving. I've been through every awful situation you can imagine. I've been to jail, I've been through everything you can imagine. And, at the end of it, basically some people I consider angels who had no reason to come help me, but they did. And I was able to turn my life around and get to the other side of this. And once I did that, I started seeing how many of my friends were dying from this and how many people were overdosing and just all around the country, this pandemic we're going through. And a lot of people had said to me, how were you able to do it, but nobody else is? And so that was another reason I wanted to write the book, because I wanted to sort of clear up a lot of things. I saw a lot of things in rehabs that were done wrong. I saw a lot of money being wasted in wrong areas that it should have been helping in other areas. And just a lot of things we're doing, even with the criminal justice system, that's completely wrong. And I wanted to change that. And then I wanted to make things better. And so that was one of the first steps of my book. I also, one of my goals is to open a foundation that sort of doubles as an animal shelter and lets anyone in that needs to get help. Because I've seen the power animals have of healing people in addiction. And so that's one of the things I want to be there, that it would be a way to heal people instead of the rehabs now they remove the drugs, but they send the people back to the street as sick as they were when they came in. They just don't have the drugs in their system. So they haven't worked on the reason they were using the drugs in the first place. And so then they have little to no chance of staying sober once they go back to wherever their regular life is and get out of there. And that's what I want to change. And I wanted to bring, like, a lot of people wrote to me that were like, now it makes sense. Now I understand why people keep doing this and people do this. After I read your book, now it makes sense to me. And somebody said, every police officer, every judge, every lawyer, every politician should read this book before they make laws and before they make decisions. And I really, I would hope, that was the one thing that maybe having a publisher behind me would have helped spread it as much as possible. But I've really tried to, because of that, because I wanted to get out there to as many people as possible.
So at what point did you decide that you were going to take all of your experiences and actually put them in a book? Because it's a lot just to reform yourself, right? And work on yourself. Mm-hmm. But then it's a whole nother thing to put it down in a book and show it to the world. Yeah. So what was the catalyst that said, I'm going to put this on paper?
Well, I had, when I was in treatment the last time, when I finally got this, a woman that worked there asked me to write down some of my story, and I gave it to her, and she was like, this is really amazing. She said to me, if one person has an excuse to use, because it was about my childhood and what I went through, she was like, you're one person that she's like, I don't say this to anyone. She's like, but that's why your story could really help people. If you could get through this, anybody could. There's nobody out there that's going to say, hey, I had it worse than that. Or, there's not many people I meet that have been through worse than I've been through in my life. So if I ever go share my story, if I go to a rehab or a detox, and the people are listening, when I was in these places, people would say, oh, what's this person going to teach me? They haven't been where I've been. I've been here. I've been there. Well, there aren't too many people that can say that about my story. So when I share with people, they tend to listen to me. And I wanted that. And I started thinking about that. And then a close friend of mine had died, had overdosed. And his mom sort of came to me and she said, could you talk to me for a little bit and tell me about your story? And after I was talking to her, she was like, you know what? If I would have known this and that before, I would have been able to help him better. And that sort of rang them. And I started thinking about it. And I was like, you know what? I should really get this information out there. Even if no one reads the book and even only one person reads it, at least I tried. And that was really, I'd say after a couple years of sobriety, I just decided to start doing it. And I sat down one night and began. And about 6 or 9 months later, I was finished. So, yeah.
And so what are some takeaways from the book that you think would help somebody? What do you consider to be the most pivotal takeaways in your story?
I think that you need to work on the reason that got you using in the first place is so important, because a lot of people just focus on the drugs. But when they read my book, they see that was just a symptom of what was going on. The real problem was something inside of me that made me before I ever knew what drugs were. And I needed to fix that before I ever had a chance at staying sober for a long time and living a normal life. And until I did that, it really didn't, nothing made any, I would go in and I would go for 30 days and 2 days later after being out of the treatment, I was using again. And it wasn't until I worked on that and healed that inside of me and really shared what had happened to me and what I all had been through and talked to people and got therapy for it, was I ever able to combat this. And so most people that read it, they'll still take that away from it and say, you know what, maybe, like, especially other people that are suffering with addiction have said to me, you know what, I did go through this and maybe I should work on that. It'll help me out. And a lot of people, another thing, they just see if I could do it, they could do it. And I want people to see that, because I was the lowest of the low. I got down to the worst of the worst, down on the street, homeless, everything. So it was really bad.
I know that you had talked about relapsing several times. And so was it at a point where the times that you had gone to rehab and then come out and started using again, was it because, why did you go to rehab to begin with, I guess is what I'm saying? Were you going for you, or were you going because somebody wanted you to go?
Going because somebody wanted me to go, mainly. Yeah. Exactly.
So you were not ready. No. You were not ready. All those times that you relapsed, you were not ready.
I knew I wanted to change my life, but I didn't want to give up that drug. It felt too good. I liked being away from myself. I didn't like feeling like myself. And so as much as I wanted to please them by going, there was still something inside of me that said, when I get out of here, if I get the chance, I'm going back. And I knew that. It was just too strong a hold on me. It really did. It had too strong a hold on me. And that's just the truth of it,
And so looking at the last time that you went in, what was different from all the other times? That last time that you were done, what was it? Something that just clicked inside of you?
Well, one woman refused to give up on me. She did. And I had given up on myself, and she refused to give up on me. She saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And she wrote me a letter a day while I was in there for 6 months. And she would tell me what was good about me. And it was really through her belief in me that I started to believe in myself, if that makes sense. I write about her in the book. I actually dedicated it to her because I had never heard somebody say, I love you. Like, I never had a parent say that. So when somebody would say it to me, like, I just didn't believe it. But with her, the first time I actually believed it, because she wasn't getting anything out of this. She was just doing it because she was a good person. And, even all the stuff she did for me, this was one of the things she sent to me right here. And it just, there's a whole bunch of things she did for me that I still have. And I'll never forget that. She got me a little box with sayings, things that she knew were good about me. She got me all this different stuff, and she would come visit me every chance they had, but I would get a letter every day I was there. And it was like, wow, somebody really cares about me. And that was something I never had in my life. So to get that, it started giving me the little bit of strength to say, okay, maybe I'm worth it. Maybe I could change. And really through her was what really changed this time. It was.
So are you out there now sharing your story? You had mentioned that when you go speak at rehabs. So would you almost call it the equivalent to a book tour with your book?
Yes. COVID has sort of put the brakes on a lot of it. It really has. But before that, I was a lot. Yes. I would go to detoxes, rehabs all the time. So, and meetings as well. So I've done that, and hopefully it'll get back up. It's just, once COVID sort of settles down and everything gets back to normal, I want to still do that because it helps me as much as my story helps other people. It really does, because I get to see people and say, wow, I was there, and I never thought I would be the person in front of the room. I always thought I'd be the one in the room listening to someone, so I never thought I'd be the one speaking. So it really it's amazing how things change in life. It is. But
so do you consider yourself to be an author?
I wrote a book and I just don't know. It's hard. I guess I am. I did write a book, and I guess I'm an author of a book, but is that my chosen profession? I think I had one book in me. Other people are like, you should write a fiction book and all this. And I really think I had one book in me, and I'm not sure. A lot of people have said you should write another book, and I just don't have another life that I've lived to write it. So we'll see. That's a good question, and I don't know how to answer that, really.
And that's fine. That's fine. It's okay not to know.
Yeah.
It's truly okay because it is a journey.
Yes.
So now that you've asked yourself the question, now maybe you'll really find the answer.
That's true. That's very true. That's a good point. That is. So.
So I mean, you never know. So would you consider the book to be a self-help book, or would you consider it to be a memoir?
I would say it's a little bit of both. It can be self-help for certain people, and it would be a memoir for everyone else. If someone was an addict, I'd say it was a self-help book because they would read and say, this is how this person did it. But for everyone else, it would be a memoir type book. Because if it's not, if I never knew anything about addiction, like a lot of people that read it knew nothing about addiction. They would start reading it and be like, oh, well, it's they would get it was interesting to them. But for the people with addiction, a lot of them wrote to me and said it helped me. So I think it would be a self-help book for them and a memoir for everybody else.
Well, I'm glad, Andrew, that you had the opportunity to write the book that you're still promoting. With COVID going on, how are you now promoting the book if you're not able to do speaking in person?
Online, is the best way I've been able to do it. I've been using Twitter a lot lately too. So it's not as good as being in person, but it does help online. I do sometimes Amazon advertising, and there's different sites that you can actually pay that will put your book out to like 50,000 of their readers in front of them for a day. And I actually gave the book away for free for a couple days too. And so I promoted it online and gave it away, and a lot of people took it. So, I think I had like 10,000 people one day and 15,000 the other day. I wish I could have sold that many in one day, but it was nice that they took it for free. So like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's just important that you get the story out there. The rest will come.
Yep. Yeah.
The rest will come on its own.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for being a part of the book club. This means that you are now an official member of the book club.
Great.
So you can definitely come back. You say that you're not an author, maybe, and that you don't have another book in you, maybe.
Never know.
But if you decide to write another book and you want to come back to the podcast, the door is always open for you.
Thank you very much. You've been very nice. It's been very nice talking with you. I really appreciate you having me on, and I'll try to spread it as much as I can for you. All right? Get it out.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being a part of the book club.
No problem. Bye, Kelly. Have a great night.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Bright Headed Publishing Audiobook Book Club. I have been your host, Kelly Morgan. We just wrapped up with author Andrew Mann. He talked about his book, Such Unfortunates, and his journey to overcome addiction and how he's using his story to help others. If you are an author and would like to be on the podcast and share your story, it's really easy. All you have to do is email me at brightheadedpublishing@gmail.com. brightheadedpublishing@gmail.com. Next week, another author. I can't wait. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, keep writing.